tutti, buonasera, benvenuti. So hello and welcome everybody to the Italian Cultural Institute. Thank you for coming here tonight to this conference dedicated to architecture, and which is actually part of a series of conferences that we called Architecture, Projects, Territory and Relations. We tried to embrace and include some different elements reflecting the complexity of the matter. We are still working on this program, and we are aspired to touch and investigate these interesting themes. So projects, good practices, territory, people and communities, most of all. Also creating a fruitful and hopefully engaging moment and place where we can debate. So at the end of the conference, questions will be very, very welcome. So tonight we will be talking about an amazing project, the redevelopment of Tjuvholmen area here in Oslo, and about the Italian contribution to this project. Now I'm introducing the great panel, our great guests. We are very, very honored to have here Olaf Selvåg, active owner of the real estate company Selvåg AS. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Architect Emanuela Baglietto, partner at the Renzo Piano Building Workshop and responsible for the Astrup Fearnley Museum project. Thank you. And Professor Lorenzo Ciccarelli, Research Fellow in History of Contemporary Architecture at the University of Florence, and member of the Scientific Committee of the Renzo Piano Foundation. Thank you so much. He will moderate this meeting. So Lorenzo, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Zampara. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And this evening talks takes into account a complex with which I think you are all familiar, the new Astrup Fearnley Museum and an office building with a new public sculpture park, swimming beach and waterside path in the Aker Brygge area. A complex that is important both for the cultural and urban renewal that affected the city of Oslo in the last decades, and the cornerstone in the recent list of works of the Renzo Piano Building Workshop. When I was invited by Raffaella Giampaola to give a conference on a Tjuvholmen complex, I thought it would be more interesting to organize a debate between the two figures who carried out this work, the client and the architect. A look from the inside can certainly be more interesting than one of the many interpretations that can be given from the outside. The spectacular nature, indeed, of contemporary architecture and its medialization often make the focus only on the final building, hiding the richness of the whole development. And the aim of this talk is to unveil the many stories behind such a complex work of architecture. The Italian architect Filarete used to say that the finest works of architecture ideally have a father and a mother, the client and the architect, and that the quality of the building derives from the creative role of both. Although the visitors only sees the final image of the building, this is the result of many years of discussions and debates, changes of ideas and changes of directions between the needs of the client and the methodology of the architect. The client is, on the other hand, a contemporary world dictated by the advent of capitalism. During the Renaissance, a more nuanced word was used, committente, which has an imperfect translation in the English word patron. The committente was not only the one who established the needs of the building and make the money on the table, but he was the one who had a moral obligation towards the work, who infused it not only with his needs, but also with his vision of the destiny of the city and the society in which he lived. In this way, any work of architecture ideally condensed two visions of the world, the one of the committente and the one of the architect, and the quality of the building derived from the quality of their dialogue. I think, for example, that the quality of the new public space that the Tjuvholmen redevelopment gives to the city of Oslo was a desire both of the client and the architect, and we will touch this point later in the debate. And the Renzo Piano Building Workshop's design method is particularly sensitive to the client's input. As has been said many times, Renzo Piano is not the kind of architect who seeks a style or imposes his vision, but he is instead particularly sensitive to listening to the places and the points of view of the many people who contribute in the work. The history of the Renzo Piano Building Workshop is also the history of the creative role that its clients were able to infuse in the buildings. And I think this view of things can open up many levels of interpretation on the Tjuvholmen redevelopment. This evening, as Raffaella said, we have here Olaf Selvag and Emanuela Baglietto. And the Tjuvholmen redevelopment was officially developed between 2006 and 2012. But connections between Olaf Selvag and the Renzo Piano Building Workshop started before this date and lasted after the inauguration of the Astrup Fearnley Museum. And now I give the floor to Emanuela Baglietto for the presentation, and then we will engage in a debate between all of us. Thank you, and Emanuela, please.
So I will give you a brief introduction about the office and then a little bit of background of the history of the project. As Raffaella said, I'm a partner at the Renzo Piano Building Workshop, and I started to work there in 1989, and I basically grew up together with the office. The Renzo Piano Building Workshop was founded in 1981, by Renzo Piano, and is today led by 12 partners, and we are a total of 160 architects that are working in two different cities. One is Paris and one is Genova. I work in Genova, and this is our location in Genova. It's called Punta Nave. It's outside the city on a green hill, sloping on the Mediterranean Sea. It's like a big greenhouse, and you reach it by taking a glass monorail that leads from the street level up to the inside of the office that looks like a series of terraces, like a greenhouse, covered by this glass roof supported by laminated timber beam. It's an open space. And the glass wall that surround the space are opening into the garden, and you, from your workplace, you have, if you are lucky, a view of the sea. So it's a very good place for contemplation and for creativity. We have a model shop where we build three-dimensional real models, material models, as we feel that this is crucial to test the outcome of the project, because nowadays you work with a three-dimensional model and everything is virtual, but we feel that testing the reality with even if it's a small-scale model, helps us to understand the project, but also the client to understand proportion, understand what we are designing. At the bottom of the hill we have a foundation that is taking care of all the works of our office, dealing with the archive, and we have also with the foundation a educational activity that teaches our method of doing architecture and the history of all the projects to different ages of scholar, from university down to children's school. The office had the opportunity, we were very lucky, to work many times on the waterfront, on the water coast. This project is the refurbishment of the Genoa old historical port. Was completed in 1992 and is very important because of his urban impact into the city. The fence from the custom was separating the historical center from the water, and taking down the fence and opening again the connection from the historical center to its water line changed drastically the city. This has become a destination for people. This project is completely different. It's I would say a vernacular project in New Caledonia. It's a cultural center for the Kanaki culture, founded by the French government. And here it was very important, the genius lodge of the site. And all these buildings in wood remind a bit to the construction of the Kanaki population. They are like cabanas in wood, and our center reminds a bit in that. And I would like, one dream that I have is to go there once in my life. It's on the other side of the world. Anyway, this is another cultural project. This is in Athens. This is the Niarchos Foundation. The Niarchos Foundation wanted to give an opera house and a library, a public library, to the city of Athens. The site was found a little bit outside the city, and the building is under this sloped garden that leads the visitor to the top, under this shelter roof, and from there you have a view of the Mediterranean Sea. Again, another project on the water. This was a project that I followed in person. This is the cultural center in Santander for the Centro Botín, for the Botín Foundation. It's again a refurbishment of a previous port area. It was a parking lot for the cars that were going with the ferry to Great Britain, and so the ferry terminal was moved somewhere else, and this lot was empty and abandoned. Again, a custom fence splitted it from the historical center. So with Emilio Botín, who was a great client, and all of us, we managed to have the possibility of building in this area. We built this center that is floating above the ground, leaving the whole ground floor area free for the public and reconnecting through a garden, a park, with the historical center. This is the last project I'm working on. It's going to be open in June this year. It's in Istanbul. Again, a development of portal area. The building is this rectangular volume that sits at the edge of the Bosphorus, facing the Topkapi hill, and separated by or connected to the city through a park that has some Islamic religious building like mosque, thermal bath, and so on. This is going to be open very, very soon. And now here we are with the Astrup Fearnley Museum. I got this image because there is the Skiri pod that I was designing with Renzo for himself, and was later an acquisition from the Selvag family. And he says that reminds, the roof reminds of the sail of the building, and the sail of the building reminds of the roof. Is a kind of double. And so here I put a series of images that will help us to tell you the story. Olaf will explain how difficult it was to convince Renzo Piano to take the job. But we, on the back side, we were looking immediately on the Google map and explored the site location, and we discovered that it was an amazing site with a beautiful view towards the fjord, and there was a strange master plan that was already approved, that was modifying the existing pier at Tjuvholmen in a series of islands separated by canals and connected by bridges. And we were called to work on this red area on the green island to do a cultural center. This image shows the construction site when all the barges that are the new land that increases the size of the existing pier were constructed. Yeah. And so it was a kind of funny shape, to say, but very, very interesting. And this drawing shows the beginning of our work, where we were called to do something on the island. What is the name? Fjord?
Like a small little islet or something like
yeah.
that.
And Renzo felt that this was a little bit too small for us. We wanted to make something bigger. We were called to make something that was a landmark, would have become a landmark, and this little building on the island was not sufficient, so we persuaded the client to give us also the other two buildings on the north side. So, and then we tried to expand also towards Aker Brygge, trying to invade a little bit the island, making a park. So this was one of the sketches from Renzo, where he envisioned from the beginning this kind of big roof covering the three buildings and becoming an icon. We called it icon complex for a while. So. And so the two sides of the canal had to talk together and to establish a vibrant relationship between the building on the north side and the cultural center on the Fjord island. So this was the first real sketch where we put together this. The one on the left, it was an office building with the cultural center through the bridge and the stair. This image shows how we wanted to continue the Aker Brygge promenade and bring people to the end of the port. And this was one of the first models that we did with the shape of the glass roof, covering and unifying the three buildings. This happened with many meetings in Genova, even in Paris, with the client, Renzo, the architect, the consultants. This shows some meetings in Genova, and this image shows Olaf and his father with Renzo. His father is doubting a bit, looking at the model. And this is what we call the sushi bar of the models. We explore by doing micro models, many different shape for the roof that you had in mind. And we do a little model like that big. And the last one was the one that we finally all selected. The glass roof is supported by laminated timber beams that are crossing the canal in order to link the three buildings together. And this is a view of the Astrup Fearnley Museum and office building that shows how the roof covers the three building. And at that point in time we were thinking which kind of material to use, and the idea was to use glass, but a glass with a white frit. And now we say like a sail, but as a joke in the office we were saying always that is a wet white wall emerging to the water. So, and this was just a kind of iconic idea. So this is a sketch that shows how the beams are extending past the enclosure of the building. And this was how it was built. This is on the Shore Island. To erect the building with all those beams was a real adventure. We did it through different seasons, including a very rigid winter. And this was an inspection with Olaf on the terrace of the office building in Renzo, and we were looking if the beam that crossed the canal was straight or not.
Renzo looks a little skeptical.
Always. So the building, the roof has a big cantilever that helps to, like, we try to have the building almost touching each other, and this is a view that shows this idea, and this is the cantilever towards the park on the island, and this is the big cantilever towards the city. The structure is a steel mast with a rigging. This to remind us that we are in a Portugal area, and so it's like the mast of a sailboat. Here we have Renzo showing the idea of the glass roof to Gunnar, client representative on site. Yeah. Here we have some workers putting the glass. I have to say that during the construction, even before, we had a local office working with us, which is called NSW, and they were more involved during the construction because obviously we were far away, but we came every 2 weeks to inspect the site. This is the roof under construction. This is the final image of the completed roof. Then the other argument was how we do the facades. So we started to think about using the wood, wood planks to clad the building, and Renzo made a sketch about all the wood planks flanking the facade towards the city, and we had to convince the client because at the beginning it was you said it's not noble enough or something like that, I don't know.
And it was also sort of we were using wood in a very urban area.
Yeah.
We were curious about it.
Yeah. And we were doing a place for free time, for culture and leisure, and so we insisted, and then we tested the wood. We made some trials and left it outside during the winter with some different treatment to see how the wood was aging, and this is the result. The two facades on the canal, this is a picture with Olaf and Peter Brut, was from last run participating to the site construction. This is the end of the canal with the little beach out into the fjord. This is the facade of the temporary gallery, again with the mast. Even if the beams are very heavy, the structure that is supporting them is very, very fine, very thin. And then we had a change in program. Until then, the client told us that we had to build a science center, and a cultural center, a museum, but there was no real, not client, but user of the space on board. And suddenly Olaf brought Hans Rasmus Astrup to Geneva. And so we had a user of the space, the Astrup Fearnley Foundation, that was moving from the previous location into our museum. So we had a user of the space that was important to deal with by shaping and configuring the inside of the space. I'm almost done. This is an image that I like because it's the arrival to the center from the Aker Brygge side. And then this shows the funny configuration of this museum. It's not a unique building. It's a series of spaces. It's inspired a little bit by the concept of the Louisiana in Copenhagen, where the museum is a sequence of pavilions. So we kept a little bit this idea, we developed it, and the blue space are all the exhibition space, the permanent and temporary on the island, on different levels. And this section shows how the two buildings are talking to each other. The yellow space are the exhibition space that are connected to the central bridge that you probably know. And this is an image of the temporary exhibition gallery. Last item was the sculpture part. The Tjuvholmen family had a great outdoor sculpture collection, and they wanted to display it in the park, so they asked us to help them in locating the art. This is a sketch. This is a model where we try to locate the different art pieces. And this is the Anish Kapoor alabaster piece in the park. These are the two Louis Bourgeois eyes again in the park. And this is how the people use the park in the summer. And so I think our goal was reached, because we wanted to have a very friendly, welcoming, open space park. And I think, I'm very happy about the result. And this is the beach where people go swimming, take a swim. So it's my last image.
Thank you. So thank you, Emanuela. And first of all, I have some questions for Olaf. I would like to ask, first of all, did you already know the site, of course? And which were your initial ideas for the area?
Well, the site, everyone in Oslo knew this site, because it's located sort of in the middle of the central harbor of Oslo, with Akershus Festning, the city hall, and Aker Brygge. It's a beautiful location facing out the fjord, and this was the first phase of what the Oslo municipality called Fjord, a master plan to develop all of the harbor areas of Oslo. And so in 2001 they announced that the Tjuvholmen would be the first project, or so to say, or auction and competition that would sort of start this new development of the harbor side in Oslo, and so it was the city of Oslo through Oslo Havn, which is the harbor authorities, were the sellers of the site, and it was a big, very publicized public auction and concept competition. So there was both an architecture jury and a public display, and it ended up in the city hall as a sort of the city hall, and the members of the city hall were or the city parliament, so to say, finally elected which of the competition participants to win. So it was a very publicized thing. So everyone in Oslo knew this site and knew the project. And our plan, and it was somewhat given in the sort of the competition specifications, but not really, because it was a very open competition, and there was no the competitors were asked to make a sort of an attraction, but together with housing and offices and stuff like that. But to us, we are we love art, and we have sculptures collection, and to us it was very natural to have to create and use our interest in art in order to develop world-class or internationally renowned new contemporary art center and cultural center, and that together with developing houses and offices. So that was basically the idea behind the project, but it was somewhat given with some guidelines in the competition that was a public in starting in 2002.
And why you selected the Renzo Piano Building Workshop, and why you thought they might be the right architect for the job?
Well, it's sort of it could be a short story, but it goes, but it's a longer story. No, but I might sort of even start way before this competition, and say that I vividly remember being in Paris with my wife in the mid-90s, and suddenly for a weekend and discovering for the first time the Pompidou, the Centre Pompidou, and I was really sort of blown away by the functionality, but also the braveness and how crazy this was, but also making sort of one of the best cultural centers in the world, with being bold and different. And so I definitely knew of Renzo Piano since then. And then when we started talking about an art center, I had also been to the Bayerler Museum, which I thought was fantastic, and also I had heard about I hadn't been, but I heard about the Menhill collection in Houston, and I've seen the images of that, and also was very poetic. Yeah. And so it was. Renzo Piano was definitely the first name to pop into our head, and we, and also because, like Moshi said, Renzo has a very an approach to our architecture that is site-specific, and it's taking into account sort of the location of it, and very much playing with nature and light and those things that we thought would be very suitable on a very sort of on a site which is in the middle of Oslo harbor. Yeah, and also Renzo is known for being very good working together with artists. So it was a very easy choice. But then again, it took some time. So I wrote. I thought this would be an easy task. But, no, the first time I wrote a letter to the office, Renzo Piano Building Workshop in Genoa in late 2002, at first we didn't hear anything. I called, and 1 year later we were invited in for a meeting in Genoa. But then Renzo had said no many times, so we finally got the meeting 1 year after.
It's like last time you insisted.
So it took a long time, but we were very sure that we wanted to work with Renzo on the project.
And I would like to ask to both of you the initial discussion about the building. Which were the initial requests you made to the architects, and how they answered to your point? They suggested very soon some changes or not?
Well, the first request was we wanted to make. Just by the way, we were invited for a meeting in 2003, but it took 12 months more before we didn't start working together before the end of 2004. So we had a really long.
But we signed the contract.
Yeah, we signed.
At the end of 2004.
End of 2004 we signed the contract. So 2 years after we had initially started, and it was quite a journey to get there, but finally we started working together. But I think our initial thoughts and the way we were able to convince Renzo to have us present the project was through our friends at Louisiana in Copenhagen. They had just had the Renzo Piano exhibition, and we had made a setup for the art museum so that we would cooperate with Louisiana. And so many of the qualities of, I don't know if any of you know Louisiana, but it's a very good contemporary art and modern art museum right outside Copenhagen, and it has a very nice atmosphere and a beautiful park with sculptures. Our goal was to create some of the same atmosphere and some of the same informal art center that would be inviting to a larger audience, and still a world class or a destination that would put Oslo on the map as an art and contemporary art destination. So. And so we basically wanted the destination to be an attraction in itself, the building to be an attraction in itself, open, accessible, and informal place to enjoy art and also nature right by the water.
Informal was a word that was...
we use a lot.
Yeah, we use a lot.
And like Moshe mentioned and showed on the pictures, we really think today it's hard to see that this was not a place where people went swimming. But in 20 years ago, this was not a place where people walked around in bathing suits. This was sort of a harbor.
It was closed.
It was closed, and it was, initially in 2002, people thought people are not going to be swimming inside the harbor of Oslo. But and the park and the museum, people walk inside and out and walk around in bathing suits. It has become a very, very informal.
And the water is cleaner as well, because
yeah.
they did this kind of tripod with the fishes. This is a whole process about purifying the water of the harbor so that people can swim now.
Yeah, so the water quality is very good
Yeah.
actually. So, but I was looking through my papers and I found the first 18th of November. This is what we came to Genoa with, and we had good pictures of the site and lots of, and we had. And the art museum was supposed to be 3,000 square meters, and we had a budget for that. And that was this was the first thing we had. And we had made some ideas about what the art center was to look like as well. But like Mushi said, the first comments from Renzo was that the scope, or it needs more like a critical mass. In other words, it needed to be a little bigger. So yeah, so we added the two buildings opposite the channel, but that had something to do with scale, but it also had something to do with how to create something interesting and what something that would sort of make this complex stand out as an iconic, as an unique element. Yeah, that's. We started out with a cooperation with Louisiana, and we were going to run the museum ourselves. And then, like Mushi said, in 2007 we joined forces with Astrup Fearnley, an existing museum in Oslo and a good friend of us that had a fantastic contemporary art collection, but needed a new space. And that was that made a lot of sense in order to create the content that was more unifying the three buildings that were there.
Needed a bigger space,
Yeah,
so we
made a lot of sense. Yeah.
Emanuela, we know that every building from the office comes from a physical visit to the site.
Yeah.
The first sketches, the first ideas. It is important for you to come to the site,
Yes.
to spend time to the site. So I would like to ask you, which feelings you had when you for the first time visited the architecture area, and how those feelings affected the slowly development of ideas and the image of the final building.
We came before signing the contract.
Of course.
For being sure.
That's right.
Came to see the site, and we were fascinated by this beautiful place, by the light, by the shimmer of the water, and this beautiful sunset with all the colors. And our building have always to do with light and with water, or at least many of them. And so we understood that this was a real possibility to do something special. So we went home and said that the project was something that we absolutely had to do, because it was really what the office is looking for, a place where you can play with the light and the variation of the reflection of the water and all that. And then there was this funny masterplan with all this this water passing by, crossing the building. So it was very interesting and very stimulating, I would say. So we signed the contract.
And I would like to cast the attention to the different types of public space that this complex offers to the city. I'm saying that because I think that one of the main features of the works from the office is that every building is an occasion to going beyond the basic needs and to design some new public spaces for linking the building to the city. And this is a good example of how you develop a building. So I would like to know from both of you if those different types of public space were from the very beginning, or you developed them during the 6 years that this building lasted.
Go ahead.
I think they were partially identified in the master plan. The idea of passing from one island to the other across the bridge was there. We made a change compared to the master plan because at the beginning the building was supposed to be on the outer side of the island, and we moved the building close to the canal because we wanted to have this dialogue between the buildings north of the canal and south of the canal to be together, to make the critical mass. And so this freed up the whole park. We had many discussions with the city also because this was a variation to the master plan. So we went to present this idea and
But to present the Ellen Vibe.
yeah.
If you want to, I'd like to comment a bit afterwards.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Okay. And so we free up the park, and then the beach. I don't know, the beach was there. Yeah, there were the beach there,
Yeah.
but we made only the last piece of the last part.
But I think what really a very exciting new public space is the room between the buildings, the bridge
And
the staircase, which has been used for sort of concerts and plays and talks and stuff like that. It could definitely be used more, but it's great that that's a public space that was not in the initial.
Not there, yeah.
Initial,
This happened.
and I think it combines the museum to the cultural complex to the rest of the city, urban area in a very nice. And so the urban area is connected to the nature or the park and the water to a very interesting.
Yeah, there is a transition kind of between the urban part and nature. And there are a variety of different spaces that are. They are also developed in the rest of Tjuvholmen. You have these barges up there where you can swim. I mean, the whole complex was conceived as a sequence of public spaces, and we were just making some of them.
Yeah, the whole idea was to make so many public spaces, smaller and a little larger public spaces, and most of them are very popular today. I wouldn't say that every one of them is very successful, but from a point of view that people are using them, they are really successful.
And I think it's also difficult when you build a new part of city to create enough variety. This was again something that you said many times, that you wanted to have something that was giving enough variation into the area, from the kind of architecture of the building to the public space quality and so on.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that both of you and Renzo Piano as well share a great passion for not only sailing but also for designing and making boats. So I would like to ask to both of you how this passion affected the designing of the building.
I'll give that.
No, now you are in me, so you have to
I mean, that was definitely nothing that was. To be completely honest, I don't think that really affected in any ways, and it was not definitely not any of the scope or the points. But I think, but it's definitely possible to see that the museum has some maritime inspiration.
But this comes maybe from the fact that we are building in a port rather than being sailor or designing boats or sailing.
No, I don't. I think the short story is that it was not very. That is more was not on the agenda at any point. But the shape of the roof has many people. I mean, it's never been said that it's supposed to be look like a sail.
No, it was the white wolf.
Yeah, like a whale. Yes, yeah. A whale sort of landed on land or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, but it could definitely look like a sail as well in the right from the right angle.
Yeah.
Emanuela, I know some other buildings that you made from the office, and when I visited the Astrup Fearnley Museum yesterday evening, I immediately think about the Centro Bottini Santander. I saw some similarities, and I saw your signature on that building. No, because you know that Renzo Piano Building Workshop is 160 people, so it is like a sum up of many stories and of many way of thinking about architecture. So on the outside, we may know only Renzo Piano, only his face, but an office like this is a very complex organization, and it is hard from the outside to detect how some buildings are linked. And I would like to ask you how your past buildings was a source of inspiration, and how in this building you used and maybe evolved some design strategies from your past buildings.
The Centro Bottini came after this. At the time I worked on this project, I was working on the expansion of the Isabella Garden Museum in Boston, which is a completely different story. It was an extension of an existing Venetian palace built in Boston at the beginning of the 19th century. But something is connected somehow. The attention to the site condition, the nature of the site. In Boston it was a city, so we had to look at the material that were in the language of the architecture of the city. So there we used green copper, pre-oxidated copper, because there in all the buildings there's this copper presence, and there as well we tried to create a public destination. This was a very enclosed museum, because it was a palace with a door. You can only enter through this door and discover what was inside. And by doing the extension, we were asked, the brief was to build all the services that were good to preserve the integrity of the Venetian palace, like a new entry, a new ticketing desk, the wardrobe, the bathrooms. Was not a very exciting brief. But anyway, we made it interesting, so we built a new auditorium, an exhibition room, and we tried to open up the institution to the city. We lifted the new extension. We created a completely transparent ground floor that was linking one street together across the whole block. And again, the light there, completely different from here, but was an integral part of the project. So in Boston, a corrugated facade, like little waves in the metal, helped to make the surface vibrant, reflecting the light. And then we built on top of this some layers of walkways, transparent walkways that were casting on the copper surface trina, non so come si dice, a kind of reticular shadow lines that were echoing something that happens in the atrium of the Venetian Palace. So it's always related together.
Listen to the
side, trying to capture what the architect says, genius loci of the place where you work. And this is something that goes through all my projects. I think they are placed in different places of the world, from America to Sydney in Australia to, I don't know, Santander, Istanbul. So, and everywhere, in every place, lightness and water reflection are important.
I'd like to know if during the 6 years of designing and making the building, there were opportunities for sharing and discussing the building with the general citizens. And if yes, which were the feelings and the answer from the general public?
Should I? Well, this project was because the master plan was part of was very publicized, and the zoning plan was approved. So when Renzo and Moshi started working on it, we made some alterations to the park and moved the museum and created something different, but it didn't vary. We can get some comments from Ellen, but it didn't vary that much from the initial master plan, and so there was no public meetings on this. On the cultural center, but as soon as I found, this is in 2009. We probably start building it. It was very publicized. Yeah, this is a Norwegian paper. Lots of pictures of how the museum is and the work on it. The pictures of the models. And that was so it was publicized, but before it was open. But there was not a debate on the project, but because it more or less fitted into the existing master plan or zoning plan for the area.
Okay, there are some comments from the general public. Or
yes, you must say.
Please come here.
Must say your role, because Ellen was the chief planner of Oslo.
Okay.
So just a few years, she was.
Thank you very much for the invitation to come to this event. And
You can sit here because he's
oh, sorry.
filming.
Are you sure? Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. It's so nice to reminisce a bit about what happened. I would like to tell yes.
Let's add the chair. Is it?
I would just like to tell a story that you haven't heard, I don't think, because when we were asked by Silver to go to Vienna to meet Renzo Piano, normally the clients come to us, but we thought, well, with Renzo Piano we better go. But we said, we want to see the project before we go. And then we had some plans where the building was all over the site. And the zoning plan said a park. So we wrote back, and I was very careful with English, so nothing was going to be lost in translation. And we said, this project is not according to the zoning plan, so we would like to wait to come. And then it went all quiet. And I don't know what Olav and his partners in the project thought, But after some weeks, we were asked, could we please come now? And then we went down, and I went down with 3 of my colleagues, and we sort of decided that we were not going to be sort of bullied by this star architect. So for lunch, I just had so much wine. And then, of course, we were taken up to the fantastic, beautiful office that you showed on the slides. I started talking a bit about how Norwegians, we're not Italian, we like piazzas, but we do like nature even more. And then after a few minutes, Renzo Piano said, Ellen, wait, I'll show you. And then you redesigned it with this park, and we were thrilled. So in that evening, I had a bit more wine. And then I would just like to say that I think it was in 2004, we decided that every point of land and every bay in the Fjord city should have a public facility or amenity or recreational purpose. And the last 10 years, of course, have had a lot of happening in the Fjord city, and now we have about 5 different cultural buildings. You may have been or may be going to see them. But I think the Astrup Fearnley Museum, in many ways, in architectural terms, set a standard for what the Fjord city was going to be like. So I'm very pleased that Selvåg and his partners, Olav and his partners, decided to use Renzo Piano, because when he said, wait a minute, we'll show you, and he said, of course we have to listen to the city. And I think very often, especially famous architects, don't listen. But he had this kind of respect, I felt, that made the communication run very smoothly. So I would just like to thank both the commissioning body and the performing architect for having given Oslo this standard-setting cultural building in Oslo.
Thank you. There are some other doubts, curiosities, questions from the general public? Yes?
I want just to say thank you for giving to. I'm a new citizen in Oslo, but thank you for giving us this beautiful place to where to walk, to see exposition and things. And I don't know if the buildings around are part of the same concept, but they are very different compared to the architecture of the museum. But still, when you go around there, they look like they are the same concept altogether. They have an organic, somehow, connection. So it's really, really enjoyable to walk there. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing on the opera side, because I personally named 2 new buildings, like the 2 fat and ugly sisters of Cinderella. They're trying to, pushing down the beauty of the old house building, which is really beautiful and brilliant. But in that run, I mean, it's so terrible. And also the same, I don't know what you think about that, but I mean, also the walk there, it feels like you are walking through a big, giant hospital in the Bayeux from 100. I don't personally like that. It's a really too big difference between what you feel while walking Tjuvholmen and while you're walking in the opera. No, just doesn't work like it was this. So thank you for this. And but I have 2 questions, maybe silly questions, but it's a curiosity about the architecture. The roof, at a certain point, goes down almost in the ground. Yeah. And there is this circle, which is not a fountain. What is that? I always ask this question.
It's not a circle anymore.
No, it's not in this picture. You can see it. This is the first question. And the second is why you can't see it. But there is a picture where you can see it. It's also there is a fence around.
It's not anymore, but it used to be, and it's been irritated. And every time Renzo comes to Oslo, they
well, it looks like a technical solution for something, but there.
No, it's not there anymore. But
We don't have the fence anymore, no?
no.
No.
What is
So you have to go and look. It is not like that anymore, and it's actually looks quite nice now.
There was an issue because there was possible to
There was
climb.
there was a
Yeah.
Oh,
there was a water sort of
Pond.
pond,
Yeah.
and so somehow I don't know exactly, but it was following the rules or what someone thought was the rules, so that you could to avoid drowning in this pond.
Okay.
That was the fence.
And the pond was there to avoid to be able to
Climb.
Climb
climb.
the roof structure.
So it's a
There's a reason for everything, but it was.
No, because the first thing I thought, okay, it may be something to collect water and comes from the roof. No, that doesn't work.
But now it looks good.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
now,
think it looks.
we went there this morning, you saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other question is why the original tower is not the tower that is there, because it was much more excited in the drawings. I saw this the cross and things, but not what
I don't remember exactly the point, but at one point in our, I think at one point either you or Renzo or someone said, we cannot figure out how to do this tower in a way that it makes sense with the complex, and so. That's how I remember it. That you basically said this tower that someone else did.
Yeah, because it was in the piazza, but we had the stair. It was complicated, so we took it out.
So it was not. It was part of the original scope, but it was actually taken out of the scope. So it was done by someone else.
Okay, I mean, still it's really organic with the
And
complex.
SW, the architect that was working with us.
And SW did it.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
have a question. From probably my question is about from a sociological point of view. Probably the previous intervention already answered it. The lady that was involved with you in this project. You were talking about the study. On the study about the interaction of the structure when you are making the project between the structures and the landscape, the nature. But do you always, or in this case, you think or you study about the interaction between the structure and the people who are going to live the place? Well, you were talking about the park and the beach, and that's very nice. But you really think who is a Norwegian who is going to walk inside this building and was going to leave the surrounding?
I mean, we didn't talk too much about the inside because I don't know why. But the whole museum is a sequence of spaces that have different conditions. So you enter into an atrium that has a glass roof and you see through, you see the water and the park. Then you enter to the exhibition room and you find yourself in this huge glass vaulted space where natural light comes in. And so you are in a perfect condition to see contemporary art. It would not be the same if you had ancient art or antique art that needs less light, so you need to have some light. Then you go up, you have the mezzanine, is again a different thing. Then you cross a bridge that crosses the atrium and you reach another room that has a view towards the beach. On the other side as well, you crosses under the stair and you find yourself in a funnel that is somehow the proportion of the space, making the space feeling longer because the roof is. I mean, there's a whole study that we developed to a little bit based on the idea of a sequence of different spaces that we brought from the Louisiana Museum So the experience, we talked about the village, no?
Yeah,
With many different configuration of the space where the visitor can explore and experience different condition of the space, and also the curator can make some different installation because he has natural light, there he has a window, so he has to take care of the view or other things. So it's a very deep study that we.
and maybe a little more challenging to some curators because they have to think what will fit into that room and what will go.
And
into
it's the opposite of the white cube that is one of the standard for the contemporary art museum right now, or at least in the past, in the last 10 years or 20 years ago. And also for the office building, we didn't talk about the office building, but the office building has an atrium, and all the levels of the office are connected into this atrium that has a glass roof, so they have natural light because the building is quite deep, and to get natural light to every office was important to create an atrium that was naturally lit. And then they have a beautiful canteen on the roof with a terrace. I mean,
So you are thinking, you are talking about which structure?
The office
Yeah.
building.
Okay.
The office building, which is
Okay.
part of the complex. The first defined coming from the city, the
Okay.
thicker one, the deeper one. And I mean, the space we draw is designed for people, and we never forget it. People is the
Yeah.
First client.
It's not always like that.
people and client. Client is different. Client, you have a
Yeah.
personal relationship with people. You have to watch how the people leave the building that you
Yeah.
have been designing. This is the thing.
Yeah, that was I was asking. Thanks.
And I have a question actually. Maybe it's just a curiosity, and it's about the choice of wooden facade for this building. Because I come from a very small town in central Italy called L'Aquila that was almost completely destroyed by an earthquake 12 years ago. And Renzo Piano Studio donated a beautiful, amazing auditorium to the city. And it's quite similar to, I mean, just it's smaller, basically. But yeah, the facade of that building is very, very similar to the facade of this museum.
Yeah.
And yeah, why that? Is it a signature? Is it a way to interact with the nature that transforms this facade through over the years?
I think the two things are completely different. This was a project that was built by students, so it has to be made with material that were simple to assemble. So one of the reasons was that, and then it was built in a green environment, so it was okay. And here, I think the wood here has more to do with the traditional houses of Norway, the one that are red, yellow, and white, and the red is the blood of the
All along
fishes, yellow
the
is
coast of Norway, you will find wooden
Yeah,
houses,
sure.
and so that, I think that was part of the
Yeah.
inspiration. And then using it was very sort of very traditional, and then very different in an urban setting. So, I think it's very interesting, and it sort of ages with the facade changes a little bit over
Yeah.
time, and just like a person, or just like
You see it aging at the
yeah.
Yes, basically. Yeah, I was just referring to your comment about your idea of putting a very different element into a urban area, and the same applied to my own town, which
Yeah.
is a very old town, and the auditorium is just by a castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, which dates back to the 16th century. So it's
Different
completely
contrast.
They're completely different.
Yeah.
But the
it's
reasons
interesting.
behind are not the same, I think. They
Yeah,
are
yeah,
different shapes.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, thank you, Alf Selbach, thank you, Emanuela Baglietto, thank you, the Italian Cultural Institute, and enjoy the building, and have a nice day.